It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andy Grabner and Brian Wilson. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pure Performance. My name is Brian Wilson, and as always, I have with me my very wonderful host, Andy Grabner. Andy, how are you doing today?
I'm good, and I'm feeling. I feel like I need to grow a little more hair, but unfortunately, my hair doesn't grow that well anymore, so I won't be able to color.
You know, I was thinking about this. Mark Tomlinson, the father of our podcast, dyed his hair at one point. Now I did. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to grow your hair and dye it at one point. Mm-hmm. Hey, but you know what? This is, I'll throw a little bit of trivia out here before we get started. This is episode number 242. And back at the end of high school and early college days, it was the early 90s, and I was angry young man and getting into industrial music. And there was a band, Front 242, that I used to listen to, Belgian industrial band. So didn't listen to them a whole bunch, but, as soon as I saw it was episode 242, I was like, oh, there you go. There's a reference like maybe one person listening will get.
Well, and as time from the 90s to now has changed quite a bit, I think there were multiple different iterations of styles of music. Some maybe call it a transformation in music, right? Today,
and VR was the big wave that was going to kick in on the 90s, but that one never really came in. But it was a big wave, right?
Yeah,
it was.
And today is all about waves of innovation, waves of transformation. I had the pleasure in Munich, so at Cloud Native Summit Munich, to watch Pini Reznik. I hope I pronounced the last name correctly. At least this is how I would pronounce it as an Austrian. Well, I am an Austrian, that's why the way I pronounce it. And Pini did a great presentation. It was called AI Native, the next revolution after Cloud Native. I think it was really bold to stand there at a Cloud Native conference and say kind of like, hey, the next thing is already coming. Watch out, because you're still struggling with Cloud Native. And now there's a new revolution coming, a new transformation, a new wave. And I want to show you, give you a couple of things to make sure that you can ride the wave and not drop off it or be swallowed by it. So without further ado, Pini, thank you so much for making time to be on the podcast. I have a lot of questions, especially around your mini book. Folks, if you listen to this, all the references to his talk, to the mini book, to everything else, there will be, as always, links in the description. But now, Pini, over to you. Please do us a favor for those of you for those that don't know you, who are you, what drives you, what motivates you, what's your background?
So thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here. And it was probably the first time I expressed this cloud native or AI native transformation in a conference on the stage in Munich. So it was first time for this talk in this format. But I come from engineering background. I finished my computer science studies in end of 90s, actually 99. So just in time for experiencing a bit of the dot-com bubble and the burst, and then long career in development, in operations, in whatever, everything in management, in engineering roles. And about 10 years ago, I started a consultancy called Container Solutions, which was basically from 2014, from the early days of Docker. We did all kind of things around that. We were on the DockerCon conference and Software Circus conference and a lot of different things to promote Cloud Native before it actually been called Cloud Native. Mm-hmm. And when we moved on from Container Solutions, which was sold at some point, and about a year and a half ago, we started a new company called cinq, which originally was all about sustainability in IT. But gradually moved more into AI and AI native transformation. And now we're trying to figure out what actually AI native means and how we are transforming towards that. Yeah. I think that's sort of the main story. And I wrote an O'Reilly book about cloud native transformation about 5-6 years ago, and now finishing the AI native transformation book, which will be out in early October.
Yeah. And I can only encourage everybody to start with the mini book. Judging based on that mini book, the rest of the book will just be as insightful, but also thought provoking or thought inspiring, because there's a lot of food for thoughts in that mini book. What I would like to start with, because you kind of asked the question already, what is AI native? Have we found a definition? What does this mean?
Actually, I don't think so. And I'm actually actively working on this right now. Just today, I had a conversation with my colleague, Daniel, about this, and we are trying to figure out what is the main concept of native, something native, AI native or cloud native, is that we are natively building something for new technology. In the cloud native space, the argument was it's not about running in the cloud, but actually architecting your systems to natively fit the cloud concept. So microservices, containers, dynamic scheduling, team topologies, all kind of things. We had quite consistent view of that. So now we're trying to figure out what is that in AI native. So it's obvious that it means AI as a heart of the system. So architecting for AI, but we don't really know what it means. It's obviously about data and collecting data and managing it, but then it's also about actually using AI in different spaces. It's not just about infrastructure. It's also about building products which are natively built for AI age, but also using AI in internal operations, like in HR, in legal, in finance, and all kind of other departments. There are all kind of technological principles that we are trying to figure out. But I mean, there are all kind of like data lakes and and LLMs and MCP and agentic architecture. So there are all kind of principles that are clearly emerging now. But I still struggle to like clearly define those 3-4 core technologies or core principles that define AI native.
And I think you actually, I want to paraphrase you, and I want to read something from your book, right? And you said, agreeing on a definition of AI native as we write this in 2025 is like trying to define cloud native back in 2014.
Yes.
And that's, I think that hits it on the, I mean, that's perfect, right? Because back in 2014, as you mentioned, nobody knew what cloud native really means, right? And it has evolved a lot. The ecosystem evolved, the standards evolved. The first people built things. And I think also in your mini book, you started, like there were different waves of how people adopted the technology. Some were moving their monoliths over, just containerize them and then try to learn a little bit, which was a good step. But then they really figured out to truly build something for that new technology, for that new wave of technology. You need to rethink on how you build and architect your applications to fully leverage the power of it.
Yeah, and I've been there when Cloud Native was starting, right? We worked very closely with Ken Owens from Cisco. He was a member of steering committee, the technical steering committee in CNCF. He was the one to drive the original definition of cloud native. That was a very interesting experience, right? So containers, microservices, dynamic scheduling, that's the original definition. And there were so many arguments. Like everyone wanted to do something different. It's now easy to say how correct it was. And by the way, it also changed over time many times.
Of course.
But I think what's important for us is that how those two waves of innovation are similar is because they are not just changing or introducing new piece of technology, because that's happening all the time, all over in different places. I think the way we see the waves of innovation is fundamental changes, right? And typically those changes are driven by significant architectural changes. Like, for example, Cloud Native was mostly transitioned from monolithic architecture, vertical scaling, large servers, client server architecture, layered architecture, all this like specialized teams, what we call today waterfall, and gradual transition with transition to internet and then later containers and cloud to something else, horizontal scaling, microservices. And what's interesting and important to understand is that architecture defines, due to Conway's law, also defines the team structure. Right. So when microservices were introduced, we had to change to team topologies from specialized teams. And that is actually what drives the transformation. That's what actually forces the organizations to change organizational structure, to hire differently, to manage teams differently, entirely rebuild their own delivery processes. And I think what people don't fully understand is that these organizational transformational changes, they need to be managed in different way, different from incremental changes. And that's where most of the problems come from.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. And I was thinking as you two were starting this topic here, especially I really like the analogy going back to the beginning of Cloud Native and how it transforms. And I think what we saw, your point about talking about Cloud Native in 2014, a lot of what made Cloud Native was learning from all the mistakes that were made in the early days, right? Oh, let's just lift and shift everything again. Several years ago, we had a client who was trying to move a monolithic .NET application to Kubernetes. I'm like, you have to re-architect it, But I think a good example for our listeners, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Pini, I know there's a lot of different aspects that we could talk about with Cloud Native, but I think one that really makes this idea concrete is currently you see across organizations everywhere is we're trying to fit AI into existing systems. Right. Yep. We just came up with a really cool one using agentic AI. Someone on my team created it, Nish, for anybody who knows him if they're listening, where it's connecting to all the different Dynatrace documentation, so that if you want to see, can Dynatrace be used on this, right? Instead of having to go and open up all the documentation, the agentic component just reaches out to all of our different types of documentation and brings back an answer for you. But what we're doing there is we're fitting AI into those existing systems. Those systems were not designed for the AI interface in mind. They're not organized and structured for that readability, for that accessibility of that AI. So when you have existing systems that we're trying to plug into AI, sounds like Cloud Native, at least one part of it would be building those systems so that they're, by nature, friendly to AI. They're going to be, or parts of AI stuff might even be built into it. Like it's just going to be much more integrated setup as opposed to retrofitting AI into the existing systems. And that there is where you need these sort of standards or this AI native so that we get that right and we move that forward and it all works very seamlessly.
And again, going back to Cloud Native, this is exactly what we experienced 10 or 5 years ago. And you've been in this ecosystem for same time. So it's the lift and shift is people saying something like, we will take the current applications, we'll put them in the cloud, and then later we will refactor them. But the later never comes, right? Because once it's in the cloud, you need to use the opportunity of crisis of shifting away from your own data centers as an opportunity to re-architect and restructure your teams and your applications. You don't do that, then you basically have a monolithic application running in waterfall processes in the cloud. That is not Cloud Native. And in a way, that's exactly what you're saying. If you have an agent which is very smart, it's actually totally okay to have an agent which is sort of like a microservice or like a group of like an internal application. It's totally okay to build something like that and connect to existing systems that allows you to experiment, research, learn the technology, and see how, and also connect it to the old systems. We actually talk in the book about this. We're talking about 6 stages of innovation. And the first one is research, right? So figuring out how AI works. You need to learn and experiment. So learn by doing. And this is typically happens on the side in separate teams, in like skunk work style team in a sandbox without connection to production environments. But when you decide to actually go for full transformation and become cloud native, the first thing you do is building an MVP and connecting it to the old world. Because at least in our experience doing this for many years is that every time you build a new system that is not connected to old world, these projects don't succeed. Right? So this is a very essential step. Build a small MVP, which is functional. It helps you to learn how it works. It helps you to connect to the old world. And from that point, you scale the new and scale down the old, right? And this way, there is no disruption to current business. So in a way, it's a good thing to develop an MVP as self-contained agents that actually helps you. But it has to be part of longer process of transformation, which has a particular structure.
Folks, the 6 stages of innovation, right? Everything is covered in the mini book. Just again, a reminder to read that mini book. The link is in the description. You brought 2 examples when you talked about what happened in the past, what can we learn from the past. And you talked about Nokia, Netflix, and the way I kind of extracted the information is don't become the next Nokia, become the next Netflix, right? Because obviously Nokia completely missed the transformation from dominating the mobile market when the iPhone and Android iOS and Android came out, and then they were too late in the game. Netflix on the other side did it right, and they were completely destroying Blockbuster. Because they understood, they were looking ahead and they knew how this new technology allows them to also provide a different business model for streaming, right? Where they invented, they started with streaming. One of the questions I asked you in preparation of this podcast, send me a couple of questions you would like to, that we should discuss. And one of them is actually, why are people still struggling with these transformations? What are some of the common barriers? Why are organization? What makes somebody follow the Nokia path versus the Netflix path?
First, before I answer the question, actually, a couple of comments on Nokia and Netflix, because you need to look deeper into this. It's not just those fails and those succeeded. So Nokia actually failed. So I've been in business, right, actually doing my job throughout the success and failure of Nokia. Nokia was, in early 90s, was super successful business. Like I had Nokia phones for years.
Yeah, same here.
Actually, I had a smartphone from Nokia, right? So the Symbian phone, which was terrible, right? But it was amazing and terrible, both, right? But the interesting part is that they saw the transformation. So they built the first smartphone together in collaboration with other companies, which was Symbian, which was really, again, breakthrough, right, in technology. And then they started building a new operating system based on Linux, which was not that far away from modern Android, right? It was called Memo. Earlier, it was called something else, but at the end, it was called Memo. And when I was working, my first job in Holland was in TomTom. At that point, Nokia was hiring everyone around Europe. Thousands and thousands of people relocating to Finland or other offices to build Memo. And they just didn't build it in time, right? It took them 4 years. And Android came just about a year before they were finished. So it's not like they didn't see it coming. It's not like they didn't put the money in or effort. It all was in place. The only difference was that they couldn't build it in 3 years, and they spent 4 instead of 3. And that's the difference between succeeding or failing. On the other side, Netflix, I personally know Adrian Cockcroft, who was leading a lot of their cloud initiatives. They invested in cloud way, way before everyone else. So they effectively had cloud native setup based on VMs way before the modern cloud native infrastructure became popular. So they actually prepared for scale before the scale happened. So in a sense, this is exactly shows the differences. So Nokia became this traditional corporate monster that changes very slowly. They said if we put enough money, it will be fine. Eventually, we will succeed. No one can, affect our growth. We are invincible. Netflix came from entirely different perspective of underdog and fighting for their place. And I think this is very normal. So the startups, they're used to this agile way of working, changing direction, because if they don't survive. They don't get the funding, they don't get revenue, they disappear. But companies like Nokia or high street banks or anything like any modern traditional enterprises, they treat this transformational change like it's business as usual. It takes them 5 or 10 years to do transformation, which means we'll just install Kubernetes in some place, and we run some AI on top of it, and then we will do something else. But they don't actually transform. Most of the companies we go to, the traditional enterprises, we see that they're still mostly waterfall. They're still mostly releasing once a month, even if it's every 2 weeks, it's just faster waterfall. Yeah, they're not doing proper microservices. They're not doing proper observability. They're not doing proper anything, right? So they call themselves cloud native, but in reality, they never finished the transformation. They never got to the maturity. And if you look into companies like Monzo, Starling Bank in UK, they are amazing, right? They're fast. They can change very quickly, they can change direction quickly, but they can build value very quickly, right? And engineers are really, really efficient there. So 5 years ago, who cared about them? Who knew that they would have 10,000 employees and they would dominate the banking system? Right. The question really for them, are they going to continue like Nokia, or they will preserve their capability of change and then jumping on the next wave of innovation? I think they will, by the way.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at, I have both your book open and also the presentation you did in Munich. And I think what you're talking about here, because you had in Munich, you called it 6 modes of operation, right? And in the mini book, you called it 6 stages of innovation. So basically, if I hear this right, what you call pioneering, right? You explore new ideas fearlessly. This is exactly what made the difference between Netflix and Nokia, because Netflix was continuously looking into the next thing, and they were early adopters. Obviously, if you constantly do it, there will also be failures, right? If you're constantly looking at the new thing and investing time and resources, not every path will be successful. But if you don't do this, then somebody that finds the successful path with a new technology and comes up with a better way, with a new business model, will just bypass you.
I think what's important to understand is that if you have like a scientific method, if you have a hypothesis and you test it and it doesn't prove what you wanted it to prove, it's not a failure. It's a success, right? Test is a test. You cannot, like, if everyone would knew what they're doing, then, there would be no need to test anything. So this 6 stages is basically, it's based on product life cycle model. So when the product starts, you really don't know anything about it, right? You really, you're trying to figure out who are the audience, what's the technology, how to build in the architecture. Everything is new. And this is correct for a new product. It's also correct for transformation, for adoption of new technologies. So the first step is actually even before you start the transformation, is the research. That's something that every company, if we talk in old McKinsey 3 Horizons model, every company needs to invest in Horizon 3, which is something long-term research to be ready for whatever comes. You always need to have maybe, depending on the size of the company, anywhere between 1 to 5% of your development budget should go into pure innovation without it directly going into active products. Then Horizon 2 is something for mid-term, and Horizon 1 is something that you're actually selling now. So first is research. It's just looking around and learning new things, because that's the problem of Nokia. Actually, they actually did look around, but many enterprises, they're just not ready, right? So they're not investing enough in research. But once you identify that there is something that actually is ready for your adoption and there is a business case and it's the right timing for your organization to do it, then you appoint transformation champion, you get executive commitment, you create a core team, and then you start developing the MVP. All this is buzzwords, right? But they all have meanings. But you have to start small and entirely independently from the rest of the organization. Because if not, the old organization will push their culture on this new team, and it will not work out. So, and then you build the MVP, and then you start gradually scaling by inviting another team and then another team, and you gradually building this new environment where there are new processes, new infrastructure, new architecture, new ways of working, most importantly, new culture. And it's very important that this new culture grows without the possibility that the old culture will destroy it. So it has separate management, it has separate processes. And gradually it gets the momentum when it's dominant enough and can protect itself. And then gradually the old legacy goes away and this becomes the new norm. This is the only way to go through transformation. There is only one way. There are many books about that. I have many of them here, right? So a lot of them the stories went into the full book. There is no other way, but there are many, many ways to do it wrong.
Yeah.
Many ways.
Many ways, yeah.
Sounds a lot like our transformation, doesn't it, Andy?
Yeah, multiple transformations.
No, but we did. We actually did. We separated off a separate team, and they were on their own.
Yes.
Yeah. And we did it twice, right? We did it from Epmon, then Ruxit, that we incubated and let it build our second gen, and then we did it again with Grail.
Yeah. But it's definitely the way. And again, it was on the executive level, it was you all go off and do this and come back with results, right? And that also transformed the lessons and things that those teams learned, transformed the way we do the rest of our business, right? Because our old product was waterfall, 2 releases a year, right? And then when we had our Ruxit product, which is mostly what we have now, but big changes with the back end, it was they started adhering to a lot of these ideas of quick releases, and then that once they had a handle on that then moved into the rest of the organization. So I think it's a very poignant idea that when that new success is found, that new wave is coming, the organization has to be open and ready to adopt that new wave, and then continue to modify it and improve upon it.
And there are ways to do it wrong. Like just a few examples. One is not doing it.
Right. That's Blockbuster. Right. They didn't even do it. They weren't even in the game. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's just ignoring the change. That's one way. That's the easy one, right? This is the easiest one. This is the big banks ignoring Monza and Starling, right? But then at some point they're panicking. Oh, they're getting big. They're eating our money, right? They are now customers. Then I'm like, okay, let's put 30 million pounds to build an alternative. Oh, that's the other way to do it wrong. Because if you put too much money in it, you have to hire too many people. So you have to start building things like, for example, observability. Observability is not essential for POCs for in early stage, right? Because it's like you need to observe something that is already working, right? If you start investing in that, in the way you start dominating the architecture or you're affecting the architecture and you're restricting the growth of evolutionary architecture. So there are certain things that in early stages, they need to be flexible and open, but it's very important in later stages to introduce them properly. Mm-hmm. So putting too much money, it means that you have now a team of 50 or 100 people. Everyone is busy. Everyone is trying to do something, but no one knows what, right? So then there are project managers that are creating very long backlogs of useless tasks. Everyone is trying to basically solve the problems. It means that the architecture, like no one knows the architecture in the beginning because it didn't grow up yet, right? Mm-hmm. You see that this defines a failure even before the project starts. And the annoying part is more money you put in, the worse the failure is going to be.
At some point, it's going to be too big to fail, and then you keep it going and keep it going, right?
So we had a customer, I can't say the name, but it's a big bank in UK that's exactly what they did. They put 30 million pounds budget to create a competitor to those new banks. And after 2 years, they just closed it down after spending all the money and basically wasting the money. Yeah. And then they went and bought some other company. So this is just massive waste of money. It's just the transformations, they don't work that way. Because in this kind of, when you put 30 million pounds, you typically put a very senior executive to run this transformation who comes from the old culture and brings the old culture with them and starts like telling people what to do. And then what you realize is that nothing is working fast, nothing is agile, right? And they basically created a weird variation of what they already had in the past. Because you cannot solve new problems with the same means that you create
mindset.
problems. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Hey, I got two thoughts, and I want to just get your idea. Like you, right? I finished my education in the late 90s. I remember in 99, we were all hired, obviously, because of the 2000 bug. And then, then the
I did that too.
I actually opted in. So I remember when I finished high school, there was specialized in software engineering. And when we finished our last year, it was 98, they came with career buses to the school. And they basically put us there. We were 18 years old. They put us in the bus with a big video screen, and they're like how cool they are. And they're looking for COBOL programmers and everything, right? And then we had to sign the contract. And back then, it was a lot of money that got offered. I ended up not taking this offer. I went with another company. But it was an interesting days. Now, shortly after, right, the whole dot-com boom, right? So there was a lot of money being thrown in IT. And we all know what happened, right? The bubble burst eventually. And so my first question is to you, is the AI boom that we see right now kind of analogous to the dot-com boom? And are we about to see the bubble burst? Or is it more related to a lot of people have learned that the cloud native transformation, they missed out and they don't want to miss out the next transformation. And therefore, so many more people are jumping on this train early on. And that's why there's so much money. Or is the answer somewhere in the middle?
It's both. I think it's both because, so first the dot-com boom. First, I had the luck not to work with like pet.com, but in Checkpoint, which is a firewall company. I didn't have, it had effect on the stock, but not on the company. So the burst of the dot-com boom or creation of internet was actually the right thing. What people underestimated is how long it will actually take to build the ecosystem. Because they thought that it will be early 2000s, right? It will take 5 years, but it took 15 years. But 15 years later, the world did look very different. Right? We have social media, we have everything on the internet, everything communicating to everything. This is not something that you could imagine in late 90s. So the internet it didn't fail. It changed our life drastically. It created Cloud Native and many, many other things. So I think underestimation was to sort of put the money expecting the payout within 5 years, while it took 15 years or 20 years. And I think this is exactly what's going to happen with AI. I think there's this weird assumption, which I was also struggling with it for a while. There's this weird assumption that the value of the AI capabilities will continue growing exponentially forever. I have never seen a technology where the capability is growing exponentially forever. It's always growing exponentially, and then it slows down and it finds its natural limitations. I don't know if we are close to finding AI limitations. I don't know yet. I think we are probably close to finding LLM limitations. I think the next wave will be probably SLM, small language models, and there will be distribution and all kind of other things. There's a lot of innovation we can still develop in AI. But I really think that getting to real value is going to take longer than a year or two that people expect. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we are now building $1 trillion data centers. We're talking about like terawatts of energy. I think there are physical limitations we're going to hit that will not let us actually get there in less than 10 or 15 years, because that's the normal timeline it takes for new technologies to actually become usable. Mm-hmm. But it's also, we don't actually know what AI is good for. Like LLM is just the beginning, right? We don't really know. I'm doing it for a few years now, and I'm trying to figure out, except finding some answers in some documents that I have in my company. It's the same. Like no one could imagine TikTok in end of 90s. Mm. What is the TikTok of AI?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think a lot of the issues with the bubbles, right, is that it's investor driven, right? So I was working at CNBC, which is a financial news channel. During that time, I worked in TV initially, and I'm glad you mentioned pets.com, because it was every website that came out with a flash was a huge deal. I was working there when Red Hat went public, right? Now Red Hat, as you say, is the more 10, 15-year investment, right? But it wasn't flashy. It lost a lot of value after it IPO'd. I mean, it skyrocketed up and everything, but you had the pets.com, you had all these flash in the pans that investors went for the shiny thing. And I think we're seeing the same thing in AI, where there's a lot of stupid AI and really stupid uses of it. That's gaining a lot of attention. But on the flip side, there are some really amazing uses. Right. And I think once that starts to settle in, that's when everything will settle. So I think there's definitely going to be a big burst, because everyone's trying to use, like right now, even companies are telling all their employees, use AI wherever you can, because everyone's trying to figure out where it can fit, where it can make innovations, right? They're trying not to fall behind on this wave you mentioned, right? Because if they can get an advantage in some way, but it's not organized, right? It's use this and see what happens, right? So we have to go through that research and experiment phase, but we're all the guinea pigs on it. And one thing I think, and I think you allude to this in the deck that was sent over, because I saw one of the slides about, high-skilled workers, right? We see all the time people with Kubernetes clusters that are an absolute mess, right? They're just a mess. Part of that reason is, number one, it could be that they're operating under the old paradigm of management where they're not getting to spend that time in it. But I think another part of that reason is there are a finite number of people who really know how to manage those systems. The skill level to get Kubernetes rolled out properly, and there's a learning curve, right? You're working at an organization, we're going to move to Kubernetes, but we're not going to bring an expert in. You're going to have a lot of trouble. To me, that is a great way for this new wave of AI to come in, to help assist and recommend how to do this. Like I recently I've been thinking of Agamas, Andy, right? With all the Java tuning, right? Where you can use AI to look at your system, and it'll tell you, change this, and this, all this infrastructure. The infrastructure side of Kubernetes might change. Just using that as an example of that would be a really groundbreaking and fantastic use of AI, because take the people out of that, let them focus on the product and everything else, right? But I'm curious of, you kind of had like some ups and downs of where I was going, so I'm curious what your thoughts there are.
Let me give you a different angle of this.
Yeah.
If you think about this, like in best companies, you have engineers, and it's sort of all of them are okay. Like all of them know Kubernetes. And then you go to poor companies, and you maybe have somebody who knows Kubernetes, but most don't. Why is it per company and not per person? Like, why is, when you get to a good team, everyone performing well? Right? The good teams, they are obsessed with quality. they're obsessed with continuous improvement. They're like, you're going in the hallway of your company and you see a piece of garbage, and are you going to pick up or not? Mm-hmm. Are you going to fix that bug or not? Now, I personally think that all these failures of people knowing how to Kubernetes is not super complex piece of technology. I mean, it's complex, but it's not more complex than other things. The fact that you have entire teams that don't have the skills is a managerial problem. It's a people problem. It's not that difficult to educate and train and create the environment where they continuously improve. Now, assuming this is correct, now give them AI tools. What do you think is going to happen? Are they going to be amazing? I think the teams who are already great, they will be even better. Mm-hmm. This is the original idea from, actually Bill Gates said it, is that you basically, automation is going to amplify what you have already, right? If it's terrible, it will make it worse. Mm. If it's good, it will make it better. So in a sense, I think it's too optimistic to think that AI automation will fix human problems. I think humans have many, many ways to destroy technology.
It's very interesting because there's also another side to that. I saw a report on, and I didn't dig too deep into it, but I read a little bit of it, a interview with a bunch of CIOs and the discussion of employees sabotaging AI efforts. So you have that to contend with as well, right? Because there is a big scary, I saw in your deck, the idea of will AI replace developers and all this, right? Yeah. And I think there is a happy medium ground where there's an augmentation, right? The idea, as you said, amplifying what you do well. But we also know that I think a lot of companies will try to just like, how do we save money with this and not maybe do the best thing? And that's just the nature of corporations, right? That's going to happen places and not. Yeah. But getting past that point, right, is going to be the difficult piece.
I think that I agree with you 100%. I think there's misunderstanding. The first thing is that there is currently AI perceived as cost-saving exercise, which is a bad idea. I mean, it's not wrong, but it's not the point. There is also a concept called Jevons paradox. When you make something more easier to use, then the use increases. So actually, the new technologies never reduce the cost. They always increase the cost by increasing the use.
Yeah.
So, in this sense, I think seeing it as purely cost-reducing exercise is a mistake, right? And we had this, the best example I can give is that we had, they didn't become a customer, but a company we spoke to in UK, and they effectively, a big boss, like somebody from the board, came to the CTO and said, you have to use AI because we have massive call center, support call center, and we want to fire half of them. I mean, this is a terrible message, right? This is not going to work very well because first they have the domain knowledge. Second, AI is like most of AI tools are sort of snake oil today. They don't really work very well, right? Yeah. What you really want is collecting all the data in a consistent way, creating tools to empower the support people to do better work, right? You want to augment existing experts. It may lead to reduction of staff. That's inevitable. It's like a tractor leads to reduction of people digging in the field. Yeah. Of course, it's going to lead to reduction, but it's not direct replacement, right? It's enablement or empowerment of small number of experts that will use the power tools to do better job. I think that's what AI is going to create. And as a result of that, there will be relocation from some jobs to some other jobs. Like, for example, translators. They're all gone now. Like, it makes no sense. But seeing it as a cost-saving exercise is really, really big mistake.
Yeah. I think, my last thought to wrap that up, Andy, was, I think, in thinking of this as a wave and all that, right? The goal of AI should be for innovation. How do we innovate and how do we get in front of that wave,
Yes.
right? That then, just like if we're talking about observability, you look at your end user and make sure that experience is good, and that then dictates everything that goes on in your system. If the edict for AI is how do we innovate and make it all more usable, more enjoyable, all that kind of stuff, that's going to dictate everything else. And that being your goal, as opposed to let's go in and save money.
It's
And that's
really
where the
about
wave catches
creating,
on. Yeah.
It's really about creating new value. And we don't yet know. I think the most obvious thing it will create new value is by mass customization. Like we can sort of connect economy of scale, producing massive amount of things, but those things are not all the same, but they're all different, all personalized, both on software and the hardware level. So I think, but this is the most obvious thing that we can see. But the next, like once we over this hurdle and understand the technology, and we will remove the limitations of old thinking, I think we will uncover new uses of AI. And I think we are not there yet. So I think like the TikTok of AI, the big new applications that will change everything, I think they didn't arrive yet. We don't even know yet how they will look like.
I also wanted to bring one kind of positive framed example. I was just in India with customers and partners, and one of the arguments they had is that we have a massive amount of engineers, and they want to use AI to make every engineer a certain percentage more efficient on the one side, right? Using the AI as assistant to make sure that they don't need to focus and repeat the same tasks all the time, but just more efficient and therefore produce more output. The other one, they have a lot of new people that they hire on a continuous basis. And so for them, the AI is used to also teach people on how do we code here? What are best practices? Giving feedback, right? And I think you also that what you have in your presentation, right? Will the AI be eliminating junior developers? No, AI will help to make junior developers better, more productive, right? It's going to be we will, if you use it right, we will produce in the end better talent, right?
And it's essential to understand that it's not about junior or senior. It's about change of technology. I think the best metaphor I used, I had in a presentation was about engines, right? When tractors replaced horses, it really did change the way people did things. I mean, now we only have 2% of people working in agriculture, and 200 years ago it was over 70%. So yes, it pushed people into the cities, into industrial work, but the people who joined their agriculture jobs, they still were juniors, but they came with skills to operate machinery. And I think this is what's going to happen with next generation of developers. So right now we have senior developers and the juniors that are still not educated on AI, and also are not very efficient because they don't have the tooling and they don't have the domain knowledge. And the senior developers, they have the domain knowledge, so at least they can direct the AI. What's going to happen next is that there will be next generation of junior developers that will know very well how to use AI. And they will gradually get into the workforce, they will acquire domain knowledge, and they will push away everyone else. So 5-10 years from now, we will have new generation of software developers. My son is 20 years old. He's helping us with marketing. For him, AI is his nature, right? Everything he does is AI. He is doing work of entire marketing team on his own, almost. Right? So that's what's going to happen. So he has the tooling and he gradually gains the expertise and domain knowledge. So what's going to happen with him 5 or 10 years from now? He's going to compete with those old style marketing people that were educated 5-10 years ago. And he's going to dominate.
So basically he's AI native. So we have one definition of AI native.
Yeah, in a way,
yeah. Hey, Pini, unfortunately, we're getting close to the top of the hour here, which means we're getting to the end of the recording. I had another thought on, you had a posting 4 days ago on LinkedIn, which I also encourage everyone to look into, where you discussed about the misconception that LLM is often mistaken as an entire agent. Maybe we will invite you back for another episode, because this could be an interesting discussion as well, because there's a lot of misconception. So open invitation if you want to come back for another episode. I would love to chat about this.
Will be very happy. Very busy with the book, but once it's all out, I think it's there is a lot of other things to talk about.
Yeah.
And it was great to be here. It's a really interesting conversation. I hope people learn something from it.
I'm sure they
I think we both did. That's one of the reasons we continue doing this podcast after so many years, is because it's just a chance for us to learn as well. We hope the people listening get it, and it's great to have fantastic guests like you on. Definitely, please, when you're done with the book, let us know. We'll have you back on. We can discuss some of that and some of these other topics as well. I think it'll be interesting to see how this wave transforms over time, or how it develops over time. Right. So we'd love to have you be on periodically to update.
Sounds good. I'm happy to join whenever you are ready.
Perfect. All right. Brian, you want to close it out?
Sure, I guess I sort of just did. But yes, thanks everybody for listening. And Pini, thank you so much for being on. I think this is a great topic. Very different topic than I would have expected from an AI conversation. But I think it's a fresh perspective and a really fresh way to look at it. Looking at this wave, in terms of a wave, how it's being used now, or how it's being leveraged now and managed, and some of the pitfalls. Yeah, there's just a lot to unpack here. So hopefully people who listened, I think my brain is still spinning from it all. So really, really appreciate you being on today, and good luck with the book and the publishing of it and all. And we hope to have you back on soon. Thanks very much, everyone.
Again for invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.